So, Karen, the punchline of memes, the subject of customer service nightmares, and the living embodiment of, "Can I speak to your manager?" But what if Karen wasn't just a stereotype? What if she was a neuroendocrine case study in distress? What if her emotional instability, irrational rage, control-freak tendencies, and social dysfunction were the result of hormone hijacking rather than just bad parenting or entitlement? Spoiler alert, they are. Welcome to Chapter 5, where the sass gets clinical and the meme gets medically decoded. I'm Dad Pulled, your hormonal anti-hero and biochemical translator. I'm not here to cancel Karen. I'm here to explain her. Because for every viral meltdown in the parking lot, there's likely a cortisol spike, an estrogen crash, or a progesterone nosedive behind it. You don't need to like her, but you should understand her, because her story might be yours, or your partner's, or your patient's, or the voice screaming in your head after 3 nights of bad sleep, low blood sugar, and untreated hypothyroidism. Let's lay it out. When estrogen dominates unchecked, you get dopamine-driven control and social volatility. When progesterone drops, anxiety spikes and chill disappears. When cortisol is high at night and flat in the morning, you get wired rage, emotional fragility, and 3 a.m. arguments about imaginary tone. Add sleep deprivation, B6 deficiency, serotonin starvation, and a collapsing gut-brain axis. Boom. That's not a personality disorder. That's hormonal warfare with a side of low DHEA. Karen is what happens when we medicate symptoms and ignore systems. When labs are ignored. When progesterone levels are dismissed. When thyroid markers are declared normal, despite the patient being a mental, emotional, and metabolic wreck. She's not broken. She's biochemically misunderstood. But the world doesn't see that. They just see the yelling, the edge, the lack of filter. We see the SHBG binding up all the estrogen and testosterone and leaving her dry, anxious, and angry. This chapter doesn't just explain the biology, it rewrites the narrative. We'll map her mood to cortisol rhythms, her reactivity to progesterone gaps, her control impulses to dopamine imbalances, and her collapsed bonding to oxytocin drought. We'll explain why she's not sleeping, why she's panicking in line at Target, and why logic doesn't land when cortisol is screaming through her synapses. By the end of these 20 slides, you'll understand that behavior is biology's language, and Karen is just speaking in hormones. But good news, Dad Pulled's got a redemption arc, a lab panel, and a protocol to de-Karen the planet. Let's decode the meltdown, one hormone at a time. High estrogen can boost dopamine, which can feel great until it pushes into a loop of entitlement, fixation, and over-control. Estrogen dominance paired with low progesterone can create the classic high-achieving, overcorrecting, socially aggressive profile. These women don't snap because they're irrational. They snap because their dopamine-seeking behavior isn't grounded by inhibitory signals. Dad Pulled sketches the loop on a whiteboard. E2. Dopamine. SHBG. Testosterone. Regulation. He breaks it with DIM and crucifers, restoring flow and flattening the spikes. Progesterone is anti-anxiety, anti-insomnia, and anti-crazy. It's the hormone that lets you breathe through annoyance instead of explode. When it collapses, especially in the luteal phase or post-menopause, the nervous system loses its brake pedal. Irritation becomes rage. Thoughts loop. Sleep shatters. Dad Pulled holds up a day 21 lab. Progesterone at 2.3? No wonder you're yelling at drive-thrus. His fix? Vitex, magnesium glycinate, and if needed, bioidentical progesterone cream. Applied cyclically, strategically. Bring back the brake. Cortisol's not just a stress hormone. It's a timing signal for your whole nervous system. When it's elevated in the evening, it creates wired but tired energy. Emotions flare. Logic disappears. When it's flat in the morning, you wake up defeated. This creates a personality that appears bipolar. Fine one moment, erupting the next. Dad Pulled runs a 4-point saliva panel and shows the spikes. This is a rage pattern, he says. He prescribes phosphatidylserine at night, early morning sunlight, and screen cutoff after sunset. Regulate the rhythm. Restore the person. When thyroid hormones, especially T3, are low, everything slows except emotional reactivity. Why? Because your brain's speed throttle is offline, but cortisol is still running the show. You get brain fog, mood swings, overtalking, and verbal aggression. TSH might be normal, but free T3 is under 2.8? That's a red flag. Reverse T3 elevated? That's a stress adaptation. Dad pulled tosses in selenium, zinc, and iron, checks for low B12, and considers T3 microdosing. He doesn't suppress symptoms. He restores signal clarity. Testosterone isn't just about muscle or libido. It's about confidence, resilience, and emotional buffer. When free testosterone drops, often due to high SHBG from birth control, stress, or estrogen excess, you get a volatile edge. Little things feel personal. The world feels unsafe. Testosterone keeps threat perception in check. Dad pulled reads a free T level of 1.9 pg/ml and nods grimly. No wonder you're swinging at shadows. His fix: boron, zinc, lifting heavy, and maybe DHEA. But only after labs confirm the deficit. Confidence, restored chemically. Hangry isn't a meme. It's hypoglycemia with attitude. Blood sugar crashes cause cortisol surges and adrenaline dumps. You get shaky, irritated, impulsive, and fight-ready. Combine that with low sleep and estrogen swings. Karen's screaming in aisle 6. Dad pulled launches a CGM graph mid-meltdown. Look at this drop at 2:30 p.m. That's when you started plotting your parking lot showdown. He prescribes protein-rich breakfasts, balanced meals every 4 to 5 hours, and B vitamin support for glucose metabolism. Stability equals sanity. Lack of sleep doesn't just make you tired. It dismantles your personality. REM is emotional regulation. Deep sleep is hormone repair. Miss both, and you become a dysregulated, defensive, emotionally fragile creature. Melatonin suppressed, cortisol elevated, DHEA tanked. This is how civilized humans become hormonal gremlins. Dad pulled, turns off the Netflix, throws blackout curtains across the room, and shoves you into bed at 10 p.m. Rest is your medicine. Stop postponing your comeback. Oxytocin is the glue that binds humans together. When it drops, from chronic stress, isolation, hormonal chaos, you lose the ability to trust, connect, and feel safe in groups. You become suspicious, cold, paranoid. Dad pulled watches a cortisol chart climbing while oxytocin collapses. She's not mean, she's uncoupled, he says. The fix? Safe touch, eye contact, connection. Estrogen support if needed. Even pets help. You don't fix oxytocin with logic. You fix it with presence. You think Karen's dramatic outbursts are about the wrong order at the cafe? Nah. Try 15 years of trauma-patterned cortisol dysregulation. Chronic microstress, unresolved trauma loops, and inherited vigilance push the HPA axis into burnout. It starts with hypervigilance, cortisol high, reactivity high, zero emotional buffer. Over time, this becomes flatline land, low morning cortisol, no drive, chronic irritability. Dad pulls out the Dutch panel, showing a line that used to have peaks and now just whimpers. We're not dealing with a mood disorder, he says. We're dealing with survival mode gone stale. His fix? Nervous system retraining, trauma-informed breathwork, adaptogen cycling, DHEA restoration, but only when safe. You don't force a fried system, you invite it home. Somewhere between day 21 and public breakdown, Karen becomes an emotional demolition crew. Why? Because the luteal phase is a hormonal high-wire act, and if progesterone doesn't rise to balance the estrogen surge, it collapses into insomnia, anxiety, anger, and catastrophic thoughts. Add peri- or post-menopause, and the terrain gets even rougher. Low estrogen, non-existent progesterone, erratic FSH pulses. Mood spirals become survival mode. Dad deploys day 21 labs, tracks cycles, and launches a bio-identical hormone rescue. It's not in your head, he says. It's in your ovaries. And we can fix that. Lab looks normal? Symptoms scream otherwise? Meet SHBG, sex hormone. Binding globulin, the molecule that traps your hormones in metabolic jail. High SHBG means your free hormones, estrogen, testosterone, are bound and useless. It rises with synthetic estrogen, hyperthyroidism, and insulin resistance. Dad cross-references SHBG at 180 with a total E2 that looks great, but free estradiol is tanked. No wonder she's dry, angry, and fried. He cuts sugar, adds boron, vitamin D, and estrogen clearance support. Hormone freedom equals personality reset. Ever watch someone spiral from mildly annoyed to full social flamethrower in 30 seconds flat? Welcome to low serotonin, the neurotransmitter that stabilizes mood, buffers social cues, and helps you not scream at strangers. Low tryptophan, low B6, poor gut health. They all kill serotonin production. Dad-pulled scans the labs. Low RBC zinc, low B6, zonulin up. He doesn't reach for SSRI scripts. He rebuilds serotonin from the root, amino acids, methylation support, gut healing. Mood is made in the gut, he says. Let's start with that. There's no such thing as emotional stability with a wrecked gut. Dysbiosis, leaky gut, and chronic inflammation disrupt every mood-regulating system in your body. Serotonin? 90% made in the gut. Dopamine conversion? Gut bacteria needed. If your microbiome's a landfill, your mood's going to match. Dad-pulled check stool tests. Calprotectin up, zonulin elevated, diversity low. Her behavior isn't irrational, it's inflamed. He prescribes polyphenols, probiotics, glutamine, and digestive rhythm. Mood is motility, heal the gut, and the chaos softens. You ever talk to someone and feel like they're hearing a completely different sentence? That's sensory overdrive. It's not attitude. It's limbic overload from chronic cortisol and progesterone deficiency. Everything sounds louder, feels sharper, lands harder. Dad-pulled pulls the cortisol graph, high at night, flat in the morning, and overlays low magnesium and low FT3. She's not hearing you wrong. Her brain's buffering the world through trauma static. The fix? Magnesium threonate, circadian rhythm reset, progesterone support, and most of all, calm. Estrogen fuels feelings. Cortisol floods systems. Put them together in excess, and you get nuclear emotional instability. High estrogen keeps SHBG elevated and pushes dopamine peaks. Cortisol wipes out progesterone and ramps inflammation. The result? Anxiety, rage, reactivity, and hormonal despair. Dad-pulled uncrosses the wires. DIM for estrogen clearance, phosphatidylserine for cortisol, and rhythmic restoration. The goal isn't suppression, it's separation. Each hormone should do its job. Right now, they're throwing chairs. Ever tried to reason with someone mid-rage spiral? Didn't go well, did it? That's because cortisol and low serotonin block the prefrontal cortex, logic center offline. Meanwhile, glutamate, the excitatory neurotransmitter, is surging unchecked. This isn't stubbornness. This is neurological hijacking. Dad-pulled maps the brain. Cortisol spike, GABA drop, prefrontal blackout. He stabilizes the gut, supports inhibitory pathways with GABA precursors, and introduces low-dose lithium orotate if needed. You can't logic someone out of a hijack. Calm the system first, then reconnect. Want to fix the behavior? Understand the pattern. Run FT3, reverse T3, estradiol, progesterone, day 1921, free testosterone, SHBG, DHEAS, AMPM cortisol. Map the story. Karen isn't crazy. She's in biochemical turbulence. Dad-pulled lays out a hormone blueprint like a mission plan. Symptoms are chapters. Labs are the table of contents. You don't guess. You don't assume. You test, and then you repair. In sequence, with rhythm. Control. Collapse. Chaos. Repeat. That's the script. It plays out in home, work, parenting. A cycle of effort, overwhelm, explosion, regret. The cause? Layered imbalance. Low cortisol reserves, low progesterone, low DHEA, gut permeability. Dad-pulled decodes the loop and introduces the 4 R's. Remove, stressors. Restore, nutrients. Rewire, habits. Rebuild, hormones. Behavior isn't just behavioral. It's a script written in cortisol ink and estrogen loops. Time to rewrite it. This isn't about silencing women or blaming hormones. It's about liberating identity from biochemical chaos. Karen is a cry for regulation. Her rage? Progesterone withdrawal. Her control issues? Cortisol spikes. Her sadness? DHEA and serotonin collapse. Dad-pulled draws the final flowchart. Light, rhythm, food, sleep. Test, supplement, rebuild, rise. You don't mock a breakdown, you decode it. And then, you rebuild the human beneath the meme, one hormone at a time.